Okay, I would like to advise anyone in the public gallery that they're welcome to use mobile devices if they're in airplane mode, and all devices should be muted, and it is not permissible to take photographs or record any part of the meeting. I'm not aware of any apologies, Clerk, except we do have a number of members joining us via Zoom today. We have Aoife Finnegan, Anya Murphy and Daniel McCrossan, who've indicated that they're online. I see Aoife and I see Daniel's cheery face. Morning, Daniel. Morning, Aoife. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. I'd remind you of your responsibility to declare any interest in any of the items under discussion today. So, do any of the members have any interest to declare in relation to any of today's agenda items? Thank you, members. Agenda item 3, Chairperson's business. I refer you to the packet, page 6, to correspondence from the Department dated the 8th of June requesting an additional committee meeting on Tuesday the 30th of June to consider a series of climate action plan briefings. The officials state that this would allow the committee to receive focused briefings on the CAP itself and on the DAERA-specific sectors. For instance, agriculture, land use change and forestry and fisheries and waste. The team have provisionally booked room 21 from 10 to 12 p.m. on that date. So are members content to hold that extra meeting, members? And if you are, which I suspect you will be, a diary hold will be sent to you, so please respond to it and please do attend. Item number 2 then, members are referred to pack at page 8. Yeah, they agreed. They agreed. Oh yes. Well, when they don't agree, they let me know quite vociferously.
I'm just looking down at the time.
So members are referred to pack at page 8 to the draft note of the informal meeting on Monday with several members of the committee and the department, NIMEA and the UFU, to discuss the outstanding issues regarding the sheep carcass classification and price reporting regulations Northern Ireland 2026. As members are aware, the department intend to make the SR under the draft affirmative procedure to introduce mandatory sheep carcass classification and price reporting in Northern Ireland, and we have given the matter considerable attention. Officials stated at the informal meeting on Monday that they will consider the issues raised at the informal meeting and, where necessary, seek further information from NIMEA with a view to progressing the SR in the autumn. So have any members any comments they wish to make at this stage? And are you content with the note? And if so, I would seek agreement to share the note with all stakeholders that were present at the meeting. Thank you, members. Item number 3 then, I refer you to table papers at page 3 to a response from the Secretary of State dated the 9th of June regarding the rising cost of fuel on the farming sector and rural communities. Members will recall on the 16th of April we agreed to make representation to the UK Government and to the Department on the matter, and we considered the Department's response on the 7th of May. The response states that the UK Government recognises rising fuel prices have been felt disproportionately across the economy, with farmers facing significantly increased costs to red diesel and other fuels. The response highlights a range of support measures, including the duty on red diesel has been cut by over 1/3 until the end of 2026. Funding for a renewables obligation replacement scheme 26-29, financial support for home heating oil, including £17 million for Northern Ireland, and the expansion of the British Industrial Competitiveness Scheme to reduce electricity costs for manufacturers, with funding offered to Northern Ireland for a similar scheme. The response also details further cost of living and business supports, including fuel duty frees and targeted help for high mileage workers, including farmers, temporary VAT reduction on summer attractions, and financial support for industrial sectors, with plans to cut tariffs on agri-food. Any comments? I mean, there was no surprises in that response. I think it was certainly was a failure to understand that many farming businesses, because of the cross purposes of their farming activities, have to use white diesel, not red diesel. So it wasn't an instantly felt benefit for many of our farming folk. Are you content to note, members? We'll keep a watching brief in this one. Thank you. So members, as you're aware, last Thursday we held our ADE event at the Stormont Hotel. So I want to thank the committee team and the engagement team for organising the event, and also to those members and stakeholders who attended. The event was well attended and well received by around 45 representatives from the environmental, energy and agricultural sectors, and a wide range of views were expressed which will inform ongoing work in AD, and it is anticipated that a note of the event will be provided to committee at next week's meeting, and a stakeholder feedback survey has been issued yesterday. So have you any comments to make, members? Thank you, members. Agenda item 4 is the minutes of the meeting on the 4th of June. So I refer you to page 13 of the pack to the draft minutes from our meeting on the 4th of June. If you have any comments, are you content with the minutes as drafted? And if you are, I will sign them for publishing on the website. Thank you, members. Agenda item 5 then is matters arising. So members, I refer you to the pack at pages 25 to 29. That's a response from the Department dated the 3rd of June regarding our request for clarification on collaborative framework supporting green growth initiatives. We considered the DFE response to this query at last week's meeting. The DAERA response states that areas of collaboration include The Interdepartmental Biomethane Group, chaired by the Centre for Advanced Sustainable Energy, otherwise known as CASE, consisting of the Department for the Economy, DAERA, and the Utility Regulator. And they say that it meets monthly to develop a cross-departmental biomethane policy and to discuss planning and regulation, nutrient management and financing. Then they point out the DAERA Climate Change Programme Board, which drives the main actions relating to the climate change agenda, with an interdepartmental strategic oversight group from all departments overseeing developments of the draft Green Growth Strategy and climate-related activities. Then, in relation to the sustainable utilisation of livestock slurry, the SULS project, DAERA maintains regular engagement with DFE, and an official from DFE sits on the SULS project board. Then the next one is DAERA and DFE energy strategy meetings. Progress areas of shared interest and policy development in relation to the DFE energy strategy, and discuss biomethane policy, geothermal policy and research initiatives. Have you any comments, or are you content to note at this stage? Happy enough to... Yeah, okay, thank you. Noted then. Item number 2, referring to page 30, the response from the department dated the 2nd of June regarding funding for council-delivered non-farmed animal welfare enforcement. Members will recall we considered the matter on the 16th of April and wrote to the department to request clarification of when and why the funding ceased, and confirmation as to whether the department made any specific bids for 26-27 and if it intends to make a bid for funding going forward. In response to when and why the funding ceased, the department states due to the 23-24 budget constraints and no ministers in place, officials had to allocate limited funds and could not meet all the commitments, and as a result the Permanent Secretary decided not to fund councils that year. In April 24 then, after reallocating resources, Minister Muir provided $625,000 to councils to cover some animal welfare enforcement costs from 23-24. However, he advised Fermanagh and Omagh District Council that similar funding is unlikely to be available in the future. In relation to specific bids for 26-27 and future intentions to bid for funding going forward, the department states it has submitted a bid in relation to BTB compensation, and it is unlikely that there will be funding available to meet this bid in full. As such, there will be no scope to fund other discretionary pressures. The department has identified 5% savings in running costs, which generated $2 million, which is being held centrally until the final budget outcome is agreed. But considering the BTB compensation commitments, the department does not intend to provide funding to councils, and also does not intend to make a bid for this funding going forward. Have you any comments? You can tend to note, members. Thank you, members. Item number 3 then, refer you to packet page 35, to response dated the 4th of June from the department regarding stakeholder engagement in green growth and environmental management. Members will recall we wrote to NIMEA on the matter following our evidence session with the Centre for Advanced Sustainable Energy case on the 14th of May. The response states that the NIEA seeks to support work to develop and scale up the circular bioeconomy in Northern Ireland, and is working with DAERA colleagues delivering the SULS project. The NIEA is a consultee to AD planning applications, and since June 2025 has been consulted on 12 applications, out of which NIEA was content with 4, with 7 applications containing insufficient information and 1 which required clarification. The department suggests these figures do not support the assumption that NIEA largely objects to AD applications due to potential impacts of ammonia on the natural environment. So, have you any comments you can tend to note? I guess just really interesting to be teasing these pieces of information out, guys, with the questions. So, agenda item 6 then, briefing with Northern Ireland Public Service Alliance. That's NIPSA, the veterinary inspectors on pay and grading dispute. So, members, if you refer to your pack for the following items, we have the NIPSA briefing paper, which is dated the 23rd of April, starting at page 40, and correspondence from NIPSA dated the 23rd of April at page 43. Members will recall we considered the matter on the 30th of April and agreed to hear directly from NIPSA on the issues concerning the veterinary inspectors' pay and grading. Michelle, do you want to?
Yeah, just declaring interest. I'm a BVA honorary associate.
Okay, thank you. Members, as we consider this item, please bear in mind that there are wider issues beyond those within the control of the DAERA Minister. It also involves the Department of Finance, which, as we know, is a department with responsibility for NICS HR matters. DAERA also operates as the principal competent authority for plant and animal health controls at Northern Ireland ports, which has implications under the Windsor framework for veterinary inspectors conducting checks at the ports. So I now welcome the following NIPSA officials to brief the committee and answer any questions. So we have Ms Maria Morgan, the Deputy General Secretary, Alan Law, the Assistant Secretary, and Abigail Armstrong, NIPSA representative. Thank you so much for attending, and the floor is now yours.
Chair, members, thanks for inviting us today. I've got a briefing for you, so I'll just work through that and then we'll take some questions. So I'm Alan Law, an Assistant Secretary with NIPSA, and have responsibility for negotiations with DAERA Also with me today are my colleagues Maria Morgan, NIPSA Deputy General Secretary, who is the strategic lead within NIPSA for all matters relating to the NICS, and Abigail Armstrong, Secretary of our NIPSA branch, which represents DAERA Vets. It's our intention to give a brief summary of the dispute, the impacts of the dispute on our former veterinary inspector members, on service delivery, and the reason why we feel this dispute now requires the attention of this committee. At the conclusion, we are happy to answer any questions you may have. Vets within DAERA play a key role in service delivery across a wide range of functions. Vets carry out roles across 4 main work areas. In field offices, for example, vets are involved in the management of bovine TB breakdowns, providing expert opinion in farm animal welfare cases and certification to facilitate trade exports on a range of products. In meat plants, vets have a vital role in ensuring animal welfare and food safety. Without an official veterinarian present, animals cannot be slaughtered for human consumption. In ports, vets are involved in checks and consignments such as the import and export of live animals, products of animal origin, and protecting against the import of disease. In headquarters and policy roles, vets are involved across a wide range of areas to ensure DAERA can meet its statutory obligations, for example, implementation of the new animal health law. In order for DAERA to continue to deliver its services, it must recruit and retain sufficient permanent veterinary staff. Failure to do so will have a serious impact on the industry and notably the delivery of the blueprint for TB eradication and DAERA's capability to deal with the incursion of exotic disease such as foot and mouth. So the background of our dispute. Despite the lengthy history of this dispute, essentially the issue is quite simple. For a period of several years, DAERA employed vets at 2 different pay grades to do roles which were practical and identical in many ways. How did this arise, and why was this allowed to continue for so long? Well, for many years, vets were employed at an entry level of veterinary officer, which is equivalent to grade 7 in the NICS pay structure. In 2015, the Veterinary Service Animal Health Group put forward a proposal to downgrade vets to a lower pay grade. Following strong objections from NIPSA on behalf of its members, in 2018, the decision was made by the Veterinary Service to instead move with the entry grade for new vets to a lower grade, which was Deputy Principal within the Civil Service pay structure, and call them Veterinary Inspectors. Whilst existing vets were retained at grade 7 as veterinary officers on the existing grade 7 pay scale, new job descriptions were drafted and graded based on grading guidance with no formal job evaluation process. NIPSA was assured that the 2 roles would have clear blue water between them in terms of duties and responsibilities. This, however, never materialised, and the distinction between them was essentially artificial. The VOs continued doing the same work they always had, and which had previously been graded at grade 7 in 2008. They were joined in December 2018, January 2019, with the first intake of VIs. When the VIs took up their post, it was immediately obvious that there was no meaningful difference between their role and the role of their VO colleagues. For example, the new VIs quickly assumed the responsibilities for bovine TB breakdown management and took up roles in meat plants where their time was charged to the Food Standards Agency as the official veterinarian in the same way as VO colleagues. This glaring inequality understandably had a devastating impact not only on morale but also on working relationships, which also had a clear impact on the veterinary service ability to recruit and retain vets. The number of applicants dropped in successive recruitment competitions, and DAERA's failure to address this issue led to increasing loss of vets, most notably to the government veterinary service in the Republic of Ireland, where pay is much higher. NIPSA raised these concerns repeatedly with veterinary service senior management via the normal industrial relations processes over several years from 2019 onwards. It is clearly established NICS policy that these new VI roles should have been subject to a full grading evaluation 12 to 18 months after the post became operational. So at the very latest, an evaluation should have been commissioned by mid-2020. However, despite NIPSA continuing to raise the issue at every opportunity via normal industrial relations channels over several years, this did not happen. veterinary service management remained entrenched in its position. By early 2023, a large number of VIs had left, mainly to take up much better paid government jobs in the Republic. Staffing was at a crisis point, and even then the Chief Veterinary Officer, Robert Huey, finally acknowledged in a written paper to the Departmental Board in January 23 that there was an equal pay vulnerability, as the two groups of staff were carrying out identical tasks. But still, a grading exercise did not commence until 2024. The final report from the Veterinary Grading Review was eventually published in August 2024 and concluded, as expected, that both VO and VIs were comfortably within the Grade 7 range. Following this, the VIs were eventually moved to Grade 7 pay scale, but this was only backdated to August 2024, which is in accordance with the NICS policy. However, this meant that our members were and remain at a very significant ongoing detriment, as they had already been doing the Grade 7 job in some cases for several years, and were now placed at the bottom of the Grade 7 pay scale, as if they had just recently joined the NICS. There is also a very significant long-term detriment in terms of their pension contributions. Initially, management side appeared to acknowledge that negotiations were necessary to resolve these outstanding issues, but despite meetings taking place with senior officials and NIPSA submitting a comprehensive portfolio of evidence, no offer was ever forthcoming, and our members are at a significant ongoing detriment due to the delay of 4 years in commissioning the grading guidance. In commissioning the grading exercise, despite the fact that the delay itself was a clear breach of the NICS policy. Our members have been extremely patient for several years now and have exhausted normal industrial relations processes. That is why we ended up in an industrial action ballot. The results of this ballot were very decisive. 92% voted in favour of action short of strike action and 88% voted in favour of strike action. On the 23rd of April, NIPSA formally notified the DAERA Permanent Secretary of the commencement of our action short of strike action on the 1st of May. The initial phase of action short of strike action involved withdrawal from a range of tasks including training and supervision of bovine TB testing by private vets and participation in on-call rotas. NIPSA have made it clear that throughout we are keen to engage in meaningful negotiation to resolve the dispute, but that dispute would be escalated on a phased basis if necessary. To the disappointment of our members, an invitation from DAERA management to meet and discuss the dispute was only received on the 18th of May. Our first meeting was scheduled for the 1st of June, which then coincided with the escalation of Phase 2 of our industrial action. Phase 2 actions then commenced on the 1st of June, and they included the withdrawal from a range of certification and technical duties and also on-farm TB testing of high-risk animals. These vets are dedicated professionals who are deeply committed to the work they do in the agri-food industry. This decision was not taken lightly, but they felt that no other option since engagement on this issue had effectively ceased. NIPSA is, for its part, fully committed to meaningful engagement with DAERA management, and our members have been incredibly patient over the last 8 years whilst we have repeatedly raised these issues on their behalf. Unfortunately, to date, no proposals to rectify the impact of DAERA's procrastination in commissioning the grading evaluation have ever been brought forward. However, we are pleased to report that some engagement has now commenced, and a meeting was held last Monday with a further meeting planned for next week. NIPSA and our members remain hopeful that a proposal will soon be brought forward which will be acceptable to our members and that this long-running and highly damaging dispute can finally be brought to a close. Members, of course, are resolute in their determination to achieve a fair resolution. So what are the consequences of the failure to resolve this dispute? Our agri-food industry is facing a significant number of significant challenges at present, not least the challenge of delivering a meaningful progress on the TB blueprint for eradication and providing sufficient vets to keep trade flowing, preserve public health and maintain readiness for incursions of exotic disease. The role our members play in delivering these services is vital and acknowledged by all stakeholders. This dispute has already done incalculable damage to Deere's reputation as an employer within the veterinary profession. Recruitment and retention of vets within NICS is a widely recognised issue, and this is continuing to make it worse. For any organisation to function optimally, there must be good industrial relations and constructive engagement to resolve issues of disagreement. Unfortunately, industrial relations across Veterinary Service Animal Health Group are at a historic low. Confidence in management is low. Members feel that the service is increasingly becoming reliant on agency staff provided by expensive direct award contracts, and that long-standing industrial relations issues such as this are not being proactively addressed by veterinary service but are being left to fester. Trust in senior management is at a very low level across veterinary service, with progress essentially stalled on a number of key long-standing issues. Our members want to see real progress made on this key issue as a starting point to rebuilding trust. We are asking the committee to hold DAERA and Veterinary Service to account for their failure to engage on these issues with appropriate urgency, and for their failure to appropriately manage the grading of veterinary inspectors in order to help begin the process of rebuilding trust and improving industrial relations. These failures have culminated in leaving industrial action as the only route to remaining to bring management side to the negotiating table to resolve this long-standing industrial dispute. We very much appreciate the committee inviting us here today, and of course we're happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
It was a fulsome brief, so I'm not sure there'll be. I think you covered a lot of bases there. But one of the things that jumped out at me was your recognition that obviously DAERA reached out and facilitated a meeting. Was it last week, or certainly very reasonably on this topic? Is that?
There was a meeting, we received a letter on the 18th of May, and the first meeting took place on the 1st of June. But you should bear in mind that's in the context of us notifying the department of this dispute April 2025. We're now late into 2026 before there's any urgency attached to that.
It seemed to me that the urgency occurred when they were aware that you were coming to this committee to brief the committee as well.
A cynic might reach that conclusion. Yes. And certainly when we met with them, we expressed the view that we didn't want to take part in a meeting that wasn't going to deliver an effective outcome for our members.
Yes.
We didn't want the meeting just to be their opportunity to say, we've met with NIPSA on the 1st of June and tick the box.
Yes.
We want the meeting to be constructive, and we want to see future meetings to have some sort of pathway to conclusion. Because I do feel that the urgency of having the meeting and the letters attached to the meeting were only around the fact that MLAs were now starting to get interested in this issue. Questions were being asked in the Assembly.
Was there any outcomes or output from that meeting? Are you waiting specific answers?
A number of the questions being posed to us at that meeting, it feels like Groundhog Day, because we continue to repeat the same answers to them, and we have already provided senior management in DAERA with a comprehensive portfolio of evidence explaining this issue. And then every time you meet them, we seem to get the same questions that lead us back to the same points with a lack of progress. Now, I'm hoping that we will see some progress, but the evidence to date has not indicated that progress is deemed to be urgent.
Okay, I don't know if you'll have an answer for this one. Are you aware if the Northern Ireland Civil Service HR are in conflict with any part of this dispute in terms of, are they advising the Minister?
Well, a representative from NICS HR was at that meeting on the 1st of June. Now, I took from some of the comments they made that they seemed maybe not fully sighted on everything in relation to the delays that had led to this point. I mean, whilst the Minister for Finance has responsibility for NICS HR and overall terms and conditions, the implementation of those still are the responsibility of the department to make sure they follow the procedures.
And forgive me if I haven't picked it up, but the most significant outstanding issue is in regard to the spine points of the Grade 7 the settlement.
So our argument and our point to DAERA management is that if they had conducted the job evaluation in a timely fashion, the staff would have had their job evaluation exercise in 2020 and not in August 2024.
Yes.
Can I just add a point? Yeah, so I mean, obviously, we very much welcome the opportunity to come to the committee because whilst Alan, Abigail and I are here as 3 individuals from NIPSA, we represent a significant number of professional veterinary officers. And the difficulty is, for us, I mean, it's not unusual for NIPSA to be engaged in very complex and sensitive disputes. But the good thing in this dispute for us is, and Alan has articulated it, at a point in time, DAERA has said that the disparity between them deciding to downgrade the role had then they recognised had created an equal pay vulnerability. So they have told us that they were worried that the disparity between the two, the veterinary officers and the veterinary inspector grades, had created this disparity. We had always said it would, because the work was exactly the same and it was work of equal value and exactly the same job roles. So that for us is good, that we are given evidence that the department have actually presented to us in the first place. The problem is that this group of vets have had no option but to go to the point of a dispute, which is always the last place any worker wants to go and any union wants to bring them. But we have listened to our members because they feel so unfairly treated, and the disparity between the actions has created the detriment in pay and the starting pay then at the grade 7 level. But the big issue as well is, I think it's important to point out, there is policy that should have guided the behaviours of the department, and that is, if they were ever going down this road, and we warned them not to, but they did, then grade and guidance stated and policy states that 12 to 18 months into that venture, they should have done a full job evaluation. Had they have done that and followed the NICS's own policy, then we wouldn't be sitting here. So the fact is, we are pointing out the failure to adhere to policy, and that failure has meant a detriment to a significant number of professional vets. Just to finish on this point, and Abigail might want to, because she is a vet and knows is very close to this. The worry that we have as trade union as well is around recruitment and retention, because what we want is that the Minister has confidence in the fact that there are a full complement of vets to ensure, and this committee has assurance and confidence, that DAERA is able to represent and bring, where we come into TB issues or bird flu or all of those good things that I'll not pretend to know too much about. But we want to be able to say that veterinary officers are there to give the confidence to this committee and the Minister, not agency vets. Whilst they do a brilliant job, by necessity they have to. But this is about having oversight and confidence in civil servants, in having this role that gives you all confidence that, and at the minute, the morale is poor. Industrial relations is poor. The fact that we're here means industrial relations is poor, and we need to fix that. We need to get that back on track. So that's some additional information just wanted to give you around the policy position and the lack of adherence to the policy position.
That certainly seems to chime with what we've heard probably from the department in this regard, in terms of the recruitment and retention, that there is a significant burden there now, which then impacts the people that are there, and then obviously action short of strike action or industrial action obviously doesn't help anybody. My final question before I bring members in is regard to the actual impacts on animal health and welfare and food safety arising from the disputes, and what would the consequences be if the dispute remains unresolved?
As already described, there is, as has been notified to management, there is a plan for escalation going forward. As I say, obviously the impacts at the moment, there will be potential for delay in responding to out of hours, emergency calls, episodic infection, or there's withdrawal from training and preparation for going forward. There's on a withdrawal from currently on withdrawal from testing the high risk and conclusive animals on farm, or including the high risk animals. So there'll be delays. Currently, we're sitting at a delay process. And there's also, if you've ever heard of them, they're referred to as SHAs, or attestations that are provided to a vet and a plant for export of product out of the country, which obviously is very beneficial for our economy. These attestations are provided to the vet and the plant from another vet who has overseen the production of that product. So a withdrawal from those will slow down, at the very least, potential for export, of those products, which, as I say, the industry depend upon.
I think going into just one topic in particular. I know there's a wide range of actions there, but if for instance, does this impact on then farms that maybe go down with a TB testing? There's an impact there, and we already know that it's quite a slow process for farms to be able to either safely move or disperse their herd and get rid of their herd, or whatever that is. But also, this could elongate that pressure, which isn't just a pressure there; it's a pressure for overstocking. It's a pressure on NAP. The additional unintended consequence is quite significant, right down through the chain. Then, isn't that? Would that be fair?
Industrial action, by its very nature, is going to impact on service delivery. Our members are professionals and are very much part of the agri-food industry, so they see their role as wanting that industry to be a success and to continue to thrive. When we notify the department of our intention to take industrial action, then their lack of urgency to contact us, well, this is going to have an impact, let's sit down and talk, because we've still got a period of time. You're only balloting your members. We've still got a period of time to sit down and talk before you even have a result, before you've even any planned action. You've about a month there. No conversation, no phone call, no urgency. Okay.
What was the date? So, and this is January, let me finish. So, you were indicated in May to have a meeting at the start of June. What was the gap before that?
Well, the first correspondence to the department would have been on the 26th of March.
Okay.
In relation to the actual notification about the dispute. In terms of triggering a dispute and saying we're formally in dispute with you, that was last year. Yeah. Now, we sent some information to them in the autumn. They then took several months and wrote to us in January and said they weren't prepared to enter into discussions, and then we had our internal discussions and escalated this to a dispute. So the first communication in relation to the dispute was the 26th of March. The first letter asking us to meet with them was the 18th of May. Okay.
And I think that's the...
So quite often employers will then start talking to a trade union about the impact of your industrial action is going to affect animal welfare or whatever it may be. And whilst we recognise that there is impacts when industrial action takes place, I think it's stretching credibility to say that it's on the trade union because of this. But in reality, if the management side had decided 26th of March, we need to get a meeting with the union, we need to try and get this issue resolved before it gets this far, then that would have happened.
Yeah, I think that's an unnecessarily long time. The gap
Well,
there
I've dealt
on a known dispute.
Yeah, I've dealt with multiple disputes over the years, and generally when a letter goes into an employer saying you're escalating to industrial action, you get a phone call from someone senior almost the same day.
Yeah, no, yes. I'll go back into my bus band's tour of dealing with those things previously. But Declan, you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation and the briefing. And certainly, I think we all fully recognise the huge importance of our vets within the whole agri-food system sector, protecting our imports and our exports, and protecting our international reputation as a food-producing region, and the whole traceability that goes with that as well, which underpins it. I suppose you said that prior to 2018, the veterinary practitioners were at a grade 7 equivalent. What triggered in 2018 to change that?
There was a decision taken by veterinary management that they felt they could get vets cheaper. That was essentially the bottom line. They felt they could get vets cheaper. We were opposed to that proposal because we thought that was naive, foolish, and undervalued the role that they played. Equally, they were assuring the union that when these lower graded vets would come in, they would be doing very different roles. There'd be clear blue water between the grade 7s and the new deputy principal lower graded vets, but that turned out not to be the reality. It was essentially to get new vets for cheaper to do the same work as the existing vets.
Can I add to that just to say what was created then was that there was an exodus of vets to other areas, particularly in the Republic, to go to a job that was the same as what they would be trained to do but much higher pay. So it created a real vulnerability in terms of staffing as well, and around again animal health and public health. So that extraction of vets from the department was quite acute as well and left a lot of vacancies.
And Maria, you touched on what might be my next question. We know from previous engagements with veterinary organisations that terms and conditions and pay are better in the south of Ireland, and in fact we don't have a veterinary college here in the north as well. So it's difficult enough to hold on to vets here. Will this even make it more challenging to hold on to vets, and could this, if it's not sorted out, risk a further exodus of our vets to the south and indeed to other parts of these islands?
I would say so. No vet or no worker wants to be involved in industrial action, but our members have indicated to us that they could take no more and there was no option. So obviously we support them and guide them through that. As Alan has said, there has been notice issued. Before you escalate action, you have to give 7 days notice. So at each stage of the sequencing, there has been an opportunity for DAERA to approach us to resolve this issue. And the vets, as Alan has said, are professionals, but they felt they had no option. But to answer your question, do you get to a point where you feel so undervalued that you say, well, I'll go across the road there or I'll go to that practice up the road that will pay much better, and I don't have to be subject to arguing all the time that I am equal to colleagues. That has been accepted, the equality point has been accepted, but there's that retrospection of, and that is why we are where we are. It's had an impact on pay, it's had an impact on pensions. And would you hang about if you were being treated so badly? That's our fear and concern, that more vets will leave.
I mean, these are highly qualified, skilled professionals whose skills are portable and sought after. So if other jurisdictions are going to offer higher salaries and better terms and conditions, then that will be an attractive proposition. It's pretty unheard of to decide to self-inflict a wound like this. That you've got people on a certain grade, and then you suddenly decide, we think we should downgrade that role because we can probably get people for cheaper. That didn't work out in reality. And recently there's been some questions on the Assembly website about the spend on agency staff, and it's now into the millions every year for vets.
And the precariousness of agency workers in roles of enforcement, where DAERA is required to, there are functions that they have that are statutory enforcement roles. We want civil servants conducting that. As I say, agency workers have a role, an important role, across all of the public sector. We'd be lost without them. But, the civil service has an obligation to ensure that it has substantive roles that are filled and that are properly remunerated, and that workers feel safe and, the morale issues, and that they're paid appropriately. And this has been the fundamental underpinning of this dispute, and there has been policy that says this should not be done and you should have done this differently. So we're saying to the civil service and to DAERA, go to your own guidance and follow what you should have, or you'd be expecting farmers and others to do. So it's a very key piece for our members in that area.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle?
Well, thank you, and thank you for your presentation. I have a huge respect for vets, and I have raised this issue with the Permanent Secretary and the Minister over the last couple of years, and I do think that they should be appropriately remunerated for the skill that they have, and the fact that we need to have our best vets here and working in Northern Ireland. I'm very conscious of the fact you've made the point about them moving to the Republic of Ireland, but also they're moving into private practice as well, so and across the water. Can I just ask how much it would cost to regularise what you're proposing? So how much would the package mean to the department?
It would be a very modest sum because the vets are now all on the grade 7 pay since the regrading exercise, so we're only talking about the 4 or 5 years prior to that. So in terms of costs, it would be incredibly modest. It would be nowhere near what they're spending on agency staff.
Do you have
We don't have a figure, but I can get that.
Or even the number of staff that
There's about
are impacted?
25 staff, so we could get the figures for you.
Because I did put in the question in relation to the cost of agency staff, which has gone up from £17,000 in 21-22 up to 1.8 million, 25 for 26,
we've seen that, yeah.
which is incredibly significant.
It's spiked beyond control, and this is indicative of the poor industrial relations within veterinary service and the delays in progressing a lot of work that we had hoped would be implemented by now.
I also put the question on the 14th of May asking to detail the engagement that had taken place to resolve the ongoing dispute over the last 6 months. And the response was, over the past 6 months, my officials met with trade union side on the 27th of November 25, and then it was only engaged ongoing correspondence at a senior level, so there weren't at that stage even any further meetings, which was quite
and unfortunately there had been a changeover of senior staff within the department, so the deputy secretary that had responsibility for this work left and a new deputy secretary took over, and that's the meeting in November 2025, and we had to then rebrief them on everything, and then it took months to get a letter. I think it was the end of January when we got a letter saying we're not prepared to do anything, and that's when our members went, enough is enough.
Yeah. That would be unusual for us in a situation like this, that there would be not very intense engagement to try and resolve a dispute. Particularly, one, a dispute happening, and two, it escalating, which has now happened in terms of the notice that the department's been given about the escalation process.
What do you hope to get out of presenting to us today?
Intervention?
Yeah, obviously you have a responsibility to hold DAERA to account and ask them what they're doing in terms of their business. It is their business to get this corrected, because we've identified for you the risks of not being able to retain qualified professional staff and how that could impact one of the biggest industries that we have here. So it's critical that we get a resolution, and a satisfactory resolution. We think it's going to have modest cost, and the intransigence to date is just beyond our comprehension.
Could I just add as well, sorry, that in terms of the the scrutiny role of the committee to scrutinise the actions of DAERA to date and to assess has that been appropriate, to one, deal with industrial relations in a meaningful way to allow us to move forward, but also in terms of the policy position, and has that been adhered to the point where individual workers have been able to be remunerated appropriately. So there's the intervention of the committee, and the scrutiny element that you have is why we're here. There's plenty of other things I'm sure that you could be doing, that rather than listen to us talk about our dispute, but unfortunately we are here to seek your help and intervention.
I mean, there have been a couple of incidents since the industrial action has taken place where members who are not engaged in on-call work, or not going to be engaged in on-call work as part of the industrial action, there's been no contingency planning by the department as to how that will then operate. The lists are published as if they're still doing the work, even though they're not, and it surprises me that is the approach.
contingencies, really the resilience then for the events that may happen but aren't planned? Or
Well, once industrial action's notified and you know
Yeah.
that your staff are not going to be engaged in certain action, then you start to plan how you can continue to deliver a service, knowing that they will not be part of that. But on occasion, staff who have been on the on-call rota are people who are on industrial action, so they wouldn't be participating.
Not
So
all
that
of
is
them.
not a contingency to rely on people who are not going to be participating.
So thank you very much, John.
Chair, apologies first of all for missing the start of your presentation. Thanks to all of you for being here. Some of what I was going to raise has been covered, so I'm going to, for the record, if you don't mind, just clarify a couple of points. First of all, the terminology around a formal trade dispute. I'm assuming that is what we normally refer to as industrial action.
Yes.
And that doesn't include any form or attempt to secure an equal pay settlement. Thinking back to the equal pay settlement of 2004 to 2009, if my memory's correct.
Yeah.
And that would have been for a greater number of people.
Yeah.
But to clarify, you're not there yet and no proceedings in that regard have commenced.
This is a trade dispute between ourselves and the department in relation to their failure to properly undertake the job evaluation exercise that they should have done in 2020 and take until 2024. The civil service have a consistent position. When job evaluation is done and a report is produced, that's when it's backdated to. Okay? And that would seem fair and reasonable if you did it in a timely fashion. But if the employer delays that for multiple years, then they're actually benefiting from having staff working on lower pay but doing higher paid work. And that's the argument that we're making.
That chair brings me, and thanks Alan for that, to the next question. I'm reluctant to start talking about individual people or individual grades, obviously, and we're talking about a relatively small number of people here. But in general terms, there were people then who were on a grade 7 pay scale, were reduced to a DP scale.
No, they continue to be grade 7.
And anyone
the
new
new
coming in-
people were in the
that's the
lower,
benefit.
but they both did the same work.
So this relates to those who came in
Yes.
and then were not upgraded
We're not
in a
graded
timely way, and that has not been
until
backdated.
2024, yeah.
Yeah, okay. That clarifies it all.
Yeah,
Thank you, Maria.
whenever they were graded as the 7, then they went to the bottom of the scale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maria, thank you. Thanks, Alan.
Thomas.
Thank you, and thank you for coming today before committee. And it is disappointing but not surprising that the department ignored the policy that was to guide them and then brought us to this situation that we're in today where there is this dispute. Is it then illegal what the department did?
Well, certainly outside their contractual position, which is the negotiated terms and conditions that the NICS have, they should have followed the protocols that exist, and that's the space we're in. Okay, I think it's just a very unfortunate set of circumstances that has led to the complete demoralisation of an entire workforce. I mean, if you can imagine, if somebody walked in and said, "Well, tomorrow you're all paid thousands of pounds less than your colleagues, but you'll just do the same work," it doesn't value you as an individual and doesn't value the contribution you make, and it seems like a self-inflicted wound that the former chief veterinary officer was responsible for.
Yeah, and have you any figures as to how many veterinary staff that we are short of within the department? Because there has been people that has left and so forth.
Well, I think they're currently engaged in a recruitment exercise where they're hoping to recruit, isn't it, about 45 or so?
I think at least 40 in the field
Yeah, at
vacancies were identified.
At least 40 field
In the field area
vacancies.
alone.
That's all the field offices. Now, that's not including ports, policy jobs in headquarters, or indeed the animal health in the meat plants.
And that vacancy has currently been filled by agency staff? Or part
Many
of
of those are being filled by agency staff at significant cost, as the member had said earlier, about 1.8 million, I think, in the last financial year.
Thank you, Chair.
Enough. Okay, members. Content? Okay. Thank you very much for your presentation and for taking the questions from the members. Members, just to close this out, just to understand our next actions, I would want to maybe suggest, and you can add this if you like, that we do write to the Minister of the Department in regard to our meeting today, clarify and seek clarification on a number of points. I have one which is in regard to the time frame between the 26th of March and then the contact of 18th of May, just to better understand why there wasn't any ongoing work in that space to try and at least have the meetings to try and come to a resolution. Have anybody else anything else that they want to include in that? Obviously, Dal was here, and the Minister and the Department will pick up on the meeting. You happy enough, Michelle?
Timeline for resolution, maybe?
Sorry, timeline, and I'll seek a
resolution.
timeline for resolution, absolutely. I mean, given the significant risks that are posed to the industry in regard to this, and the vital role that vets do actually play in upholding high animal welfare standards and our food security, which is paramount for what I consider to be the most important Indigenous industry that we have.
Absolutely, and we appreciate your engagement with the department. I think it's also important to make sure that they explain why they didn't follow the NICS protocols in the first place and do the job evaluation after these rules were introduced 2018/2019, because that's key. I wouldn't want a distraction about the 26th of March to the 18th of May, which is important, very important, because they should have been more timely. But there's 4 or 5 years prior to that are significantly more important.
Sitting, yes,
Yeah.
sort of idle or vacant in that period as well, yeah. And as you said, Maria, there is a process there, which is an NICS process, which evidently hasn't been followed. I think that is.
Yeah, and the lack of action has caused a lot of morale issues.
I just wanted to emphasise, as a rep of, to represent the feelings of the people involved. They're very much invested in the agri-food industry and its success in Northern Ireland. They want to be there and doing the jobs. They've exhausted all options, and they have in effect been ignored. As Alan was saying, time and time again, we've brought back to this point. And no progress has been made. So as they had exhausted all options. And,
I think that's evident today.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Abigail. Okay, are you happy enough? Look, you've got enough on that. Okay, members, we're content. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just say, is that a year ago? March 2025 to May 2026 or not?
They initially triggered they announced it in 2025 in January. These guys wrote in March of this year, just about escalating it, and then it wasn't until the 18th of May. They say, let's have a meeting at the start of June. Okay, members, then we're on to agenda item 7, which is a departmental pre-introduction oral briefing, the Fisheries, Agriculture and Environment Bill, Water Environment Bill, sorry. So members, as you're aware, last week we were notified that the Minister and Deputy First Minister have approved the introduction of the Fisheries, Agriculture and Water Environment Bill to the Assembly, and that today we would receive a pre-introductory briefing from officials. So members, I refer you to the pack and the department briefing paper starting at page 46. Correspondence from the Minister dated the 3rd of June notifying the committee of the introduction of the bill. That's at page 51, a pre-introduction copy of the draft bill starting at page 54, and the explanatory and financial memorandum starting at page 89. So we're now going to hear from officials who work at the Marine and Fisheries Division to brief the committee and answer any questions that we may have at this stage. We have Mr. Owen Little, the Director, and Colin Armstrong, the Deputy Director of Policy and Legislation. And from the Fisheries, Agriculture and Water Environment Bill team, we have Tommy McCormick and Alison McCaw, I believe. Yes, excellent. No problem. Okay, guys, whenever you are comfortable and you have everything in front of you, please feel free to brief the committee.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning to you and members of the committee. I am Owen Little, as outlined, Director of Marine Fisheries Division, and I would like to thank you for this opportunity to update you today on the Fisheries, Agriculture and Water Environment Bill. I am joined by Deputy Director Colin Armstrong and members of the Fisheries Bill team, Tommy McCormick and Alison McCaw. So I'm going to lay out this, basically a bit of a background, and then cover some comms and stakeholder engagement, and then touch on inland fisheries, inland and sea enforcement, agriculture and protection of the water environment before summing up. So, this executive bill spans a number of policy areas within my remit. As you're aware, the bill has not yet been formally introduced to the Assembly, so today's briefing will remain high level. Officials would, of course, be happy to return with a more detailed session following introduction. By way of context, I will briefly outline the Department's role and the sectors we regulate. Fisheries are devolved, but the position for inland fisheries in Northern Ireland is more specific than that broad framing suggests. DAERA's functions are primarily grounded in the Fisheries Act Northern Ireland 1966, which provides for future policy responsibility, regulatory oversight and operational delivery. This is therefore a mixed remit spanning policy, regulation and direct activity. The Fisheries, Agriculture and Water Environment Bill is intended to update and modernise that 1966 framework and related legislation. The current legal framework is fragmented, outdated and does not reflect modern environmental standards or policy priorities, including ecosystem-based management and the impacts of climate change. New primary legislation is required to introduce statutory objectives and duties on the Department, expand regulation-making powers, reform enforcement frameworks and penalties, and modernise licensing structures. With respect to the UK Fisheries Act 2020 and the Joint Fisheries Statement, they establish an overarching framework for the marine environment, including 8 fisheries objectives and high-level policies to deliver sustainable, profitable sectors supported by a resilient marine ecosystem. The ambition, which this bill seeks to align with, is to deliver world-class sustainable fisheries and aquaculture. Achieving this in Northern Ireland requires updated primary legislation and an equivalent framework for inland waters. I will now touch on communications and stakeholder engagement. Policy development has been ongoing since summer 2024, including co-design with key stakeholders. 2 public consultations were undertaken: fisheries and aquaculture policy between July and September 2025 with 61 responses, and water environment protection between September and November 2025 with 65 responses alongside a petition of 1,740 signatures. The committee has been provided with summaries of responses. Officials have continued engagement throughout bill development, including detailed discussions with fish farmers to ensure impacts on businesses have been fully considered and refinements made where necessary. I will now move on to inland fisheries. Our approach to inland fisheries is framed around conservation, protection and improvement, rather than maximising catch. While commercially modest, inland fisheries are disproportionately significant in recreational, cultural and policy terms. Commercial activity primarily relates to the eel fisheries, particularly Loch Ness, and historically salmon netting, which is now heavily restricted for conservation. Angling is of major importance. DAERA facilitates access of up to 89 public waters and invests in facilities and stock enhancement, reflecting clear public value beyond market value. By way of scale, there were 27,806 recreational licences issued in 2025 and 103 individual commercial fishers held licences, of which 968 freshwater commercial licences were issued. These figures demonstrate regional economic value, local employment and cultural importance. Historically, management focused on individual species and catch regulation. We are moving to an ecosystem-based approach that considers habitats, water quality and wider pressures. The bill establishes a framework for a science-based, transparent and adaptive system with clear duties on the Department to plan, consult and act in line with sustainability and wider societal objectives. It introduced a set of statutory objectives for inland waters aligned with the UK model, including minimising and where possible reversing ecosystem harm, supporting long-term environmental sustainability alongside economic and social benefits, maintaining or restoring fish populations. This moves ecosystem thinking from guidance into law. The framework balances environmental sustainability, economic and social outcomes and scientific advice with interpretation and application set out in policy statement to ensure proportionality and accountability. Expanded regulation-making powers will provide flexibility to respond to scientific, environmental and international developments without requiring repeated primary legislation. On inland and sea enforcement, the bill establishes a comprehensive and modern enforcement framework across inland and sea fisheries. It consolidates powers and introduces a more flexible, proportionate penalty regime, enabling minor offences to be dealt with efficiently while maintaining strong sanctions for serious breaches. Maximum penalties will be increased to reflect current values and align with neighbouring jurisdictions. A key reform is the move from fragmented powers to a modern regulatory toolkit, including enforcement powers equivalent to those available elsewhere in the UK. This is particularly important offshore, where Northern Ireland has historically lagged behind. The bill introduces a graduated enforcement approach: fixed penalty notices for minor offences, administrative penalties for low-level breaches, strengthened prosecution for serious offences, particularly those involving environmental damage. This represents a deliberate shift towards deterrence and proportionality. On agriculture, the agriculture provisions represent a modernisation and restructuring of the current system. They move from a narrow licence-driven approach to a more integrated ecosystem-based regime. The bill establishes a clear licensing framework, ensures continuity of existing licences, introduces formal transfer mechanisms, and expands scope beyond fish farming to include shellfish and aquatic plants. This reflects the evolution of the sector and provides stability for operators while enabling future growth. Embedding agriculture within an ecosystem-based framework ensures consistency with biodiversity and water quality objectives. The bill supports a joined-up system where aquaculture, fisheries, habitats and water quality are managed together, reflecting real-world interactions. It also signals support for a vibrant, profitable and sustainable sector aligned with the UK Fisheries Act and Joint Fisheries Statement.
Curriculum is undergoing its most
A more transparent and streamlined licence system will reduce barriers for new entrants and support innovation, diversification and expansion. Finally, on protection of the water environment, the bill elevates water quality as a central objective. It introduces a strengthened and more consistent enforcement regime for pollution and water-related offences, with increased penalties to reflect the seriousness of environmental harm and ensure fairness across offenders. New powers will enable fixed penalty notices for offences under the Water Northern Ireland Order 1999, addressing the current limitation where only summary conviction is available for relatively minor offences. This allows minor breaches to be addressed proportionately without unnecessary criminalisation while maintaining accountability. More broadly, the bill adopts a whole system approach to water management, integrating habitats, species and water quality across rivers, lakes and coastal waters. As such, water protection moves beyond responding to pollution incidents and becomes part of wider ecosystem management. The Lough Neagh report highlights the need for enhanced enforcement, including fixed penalties and updated fines. The bill responds to that by strengthening enforcement while ensuring measures remain proportionate and effective. In conclusion, the bill provides a modern, coherent framework for managing fisheries, aquaculture and the water environment in Northern Ireland. It aligns inland and marine policy, embeds an ecosystem-based approach, strengthens enforcement and supports sustainable economic activity. Crucially, it will enhance protection of key assets such as Lough Neagh and all aquatic environments, deter non-compliance and enable DAERA to fulfil its statutory duty to promote the conservation and cleanliness of water resources.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And just remember, this is a high level briefing today. The bill is in your pack, but it's been shared in confidence basis. So if we keep the questions in that space, if that's okay, members, at this stage. You'll be aware that the committee have just completed their committee stage of the dilapidations bill. One of the things that we found, I certainly found useful, and I think other members found useful, possibly would work and sit very well with this. And that is the claim that you've made here. This is about tidying up old legislation, maybe moving things that already exist into a single bill, which makes sense. And also there's a piece on offences and stuff, and what we requested at a period in our deliberations that was clearly set out at the start. So a table which clearly indicates which is like a carryover or a direct replication of a law, and that it's not new, but if it's being reworded, we'd need that, but also clearly identifies the new provisions within the law or the regulations at a very early stage. That would really help us, because we don't have much time left in this mandate, and we want to give everything its due deliberations and due scrutiny, and that would help the committee at the start. So if you could just even take that on board, and if it need any further clarity in that, sometimes I'm a bit untidy in how I explain it, but it certainly
makes
helps.
sense, Chair.
Okay, and then a separate a separate table again on the offences. So I think there's some. It's alluding to new offences maybe coming in, or certainly a new scheme of charges that might be levied. But so if they're new, if they're replicated or if they're existing, and just so we can clearly see that. Okay, so a couple of questions then, if that's okay. I see, again, another thing that popped out in the previous bill where we looked at the difficulty when we don't have clear definitions on the face of the bill. And I'm not sure if there's going to be a clear definition of aquaculture that would enable licensing or new sectors going forward. So do you foresee any problems with regard to, or any ambition to clearly provide definitions for this bill? Or maybe this bill is slightly different in that it's...
So, Chair, there will be extensive list of definitions, because part of the weakness we've found operating with previous legislation is that it has been unclear, or issues and topics and subjects have moved on. So, it's particularly in agriculture, there is an intent, or is in the bill, to have that clarity within definitions.
Okay, no problem. And then the bill will broaden the existing focus of the 1966 Act from single fish populations of fisheries to managing the populations in an interconnected ecological system. And that potentially sounds easy to say, but may be harder to actually to do in practice. So will it involve consistent monitoring of fish stocks, etc.? And how will that monitor success in that regard? How do you see that playing out?
So there's existing extensive data for large parts of the environment, fish stocks, etc. Acknowledge that there are gaps, and certainly Loch Ness has sort of highlighted some of where the gaps are. And the department is moving forward with research and looking to expand monitoring to close off those gaps. So for this to work, we have to have the science data. We have a lot of that already, and now it's more about using that science data more effectively against primary legislation to deliver effective outcomes.
I think we do have, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but really useful to know a very qualitative and quantitative high-level mapping of all the streams, rivers, lochs, lakes, and canals across Northern Ireland. I think that in itself is good to have that, but there's also, have we captured the entirety of the people who use the water? And because I see no reference in here, for instance, to hydropower. And that may be missing, or maybe in here, because I haven't had a chance to get into it in depth, but water sports, for instance, and recreational users. And obviously, and then we have the cold water dippers, which a number of us are particularly interested in, but everybody shares the same ambition because we want everything to exist in an ecosystem. So will this bill seek to encompass all of those things, and does it also impact on the River Basin Management Plan? And is there ongoing work to ensure that all of these things are being talked about at the same time in the same space?
So I'll just briefly address some of your queries, and yes. I'll pass you to Colin, who's very much entrenched with the water policy. It won't go into those specifics, other water users, because there's other legislation that deals with that. So, for instance, on bathing waters, currently there's consultation out in bathing waters, and that's looking at the definition of bathing waters, who uses, it's looking for people's responses back, because on bathing waters, it's been recognised that it came out for public health of bathing and a certain sort of criteria for bathing water, but times have moved on. If you go to the North Coast, you see lots of surfers, etc. So that's an opportunity for people to feed back on that consultation, and that has its own set of regulations for identifying bathing waters, etc., and then monitoring for public health. I'll pass to Colin for broader water policy and river basement management plan, how it all fits together.
Yeah, you've hit on that exactly. As what the intent is, it's to make sure that the fisheries policies are totally in alignment with the broader water policy, as is provided by the river basin management plans. So this is largely around the fisheries measures and the fisheries objectives, but to make sure that they're completely complementary with the ecological objectives that are set through River Basin Management Plan, which says this is what the condition we would like the water to be in, so that we can have those benefits for society, and whether it's recreation, whether it's for fishing, so that our water resources can be sustainably used. So that's completely what the intent is here. And
we do, and I appreciate that, but we do see where different stakeholders rub up against each other, because obviously you've got those who are into angling, who would like work done around weirs, hydropower plants and things like that, and it is complicated and complex, but that's what you guys are here to do, and we're here to do too, to try and deliver what works for each and all. Okay, thank you very much. Declan.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. I suppose what I want to understand this. I'm correct in saying that this is coming about because as a consequence of Brexit and us being removed from the common fisheries policy. Is that right?
This predates me, but I would suggest this has been an aspiration to update the 66 Act for a long time. And I think the last time there was development of a bill, but there wasn't time to take it through, and that was 2016. So irrespective of EU exit, we needed to update the Fisheries Act, because in 66, as I've explained in the introduction, it was constrained and maybe narrow, and the requirements simply for industry and the environment have changed. So this would be required anyway, I would suggest.
And do you see then, given then that the common fishery policy continues to apply in the south of Ireland, because it is an EU member state, obviously the sea around the country is just the one sea. The fish don't know that they're swimming between different jurisdictions and ecosystems interconnected. How can you, for proper holistic management, how will you work to ensure that this draft legislation will align with the common fisheries policy?
So this bill, as highlighted up front, is very much about bringing an inland fisheries framework up to date, and then bringing consistency for other elements of inland and marine and sea fisheries. There's quite a robust policy and legislative framework for the marine environment for sea fisheries, and structures to ensure that at international level, at EU level, at UK level, to make sure that science is taken into consideration across the different fisheries areas, so that the appropriate quotas are set and agreed at the EU-UK level. So I would suggest this bill doesn't touch and interfere in that, because that's already set. This is more about bringing inland fisheries more into alignment to have its own policy and principles, like the marine side and sea fisheries side, and then other parts of the bill are about just making sure there's consistency of existing sort of, say, penalties, etc.
And then is Foyle and Carlingford excluded for this because it's jointly managed, or is because of the in the case of Foyle, the dispute over ownership of it?
So we have engaged with the Lochs Agency on this, so we acknowledge there will be a hiatus until the Foyle Fisheries Act 52 is actually brought up, and we've engaged with the Republic of Ireland on this issue to meet with them to now look at this. So this is a short mandate. This is what we're doing with this Fisheries, Agriculture and Water Environment Bill, but we're well aware of the need then for the next stages to engage on the Foyle and Carlingford areas. And we already have close engagement on some of the inland fisheries matters anyway at the operational level. So it's just making sure that that engagement continues, which it will, and that we manage any short-term differences, and make sure that we work with our colleagues in Lochs Agency and the Republic of Ireland to take forward new amended legislation.
Thank you. Thank you.
One for me just before we move on to John. In relation to SORPI, so we're bringing in a scheme of regulations and fines and payments against polluters and stuff, but obviously until SORPI's dealt with, that statutory protection is a significant barrier, I think, to the success of any legislation moving forward. Has there been any work in regard to the impact that SORPI will have in terms of the efficacy of any legislation?
Well, again, I'll start and then I'll defer to Colin, who is again more in the water or more detailed in water policy. But the Minister's intent is to end that and to have a more consistent and fair regime for everybody. So anybody breaching regulation or law is dealt with in the same manner. So I mean that is at the executive level to be considered at the minute. So is there anything to add?
No, nothing further on that.
Have you had any, as Minister, received any up-to-date information back from the Department of Infrastructure and the Minister there in regards to the intention for the departments to work collegiately on a satisfactory outcome to ensure that everybody is treated equally, including statutory agencies?
So more broadly, there is engagement at ministerial level. In fact, there'll be engagement soon on sensitive area review, on setting that to understand what the implications, etc. be. So there is close engagement between officials and ministers on this, because there's a recognition that there are certain parts of society contributing to the degradation of our water resources. Wastewater is one of those, and there's an issue with what budget's been committed to be able to address those. The minister's put it on record that he is supportive of the Minister for Infrastructure to actually address those issues. And if we are going to if we're going to address water quality, that's going to have to be looked at, because if we don't have sound water quality, it's going to impact our fisheries, shellfish, aquaculture,
Public health
and public health
in the long run. Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you, John.
Chair, thank you, and thanks to you all for being here to present on this. I probably should declare an interest in that I feel an emotional attachment, I think, to the 1966 Act. Only because
birthday,
only because we were born the same year, yeah, and not for any other reason, of course. The thing that strikes me is that in the 1966 Act, it either included or was amended to include that the department may promote angling, and also that the ministry shall have power to acquire by agreement fishing rights in any inland waters for the purpose of developing or improving facilities for angling. These, of course, would have been, this wording isn't from the Act, those are direct quotes, but for public use, of course, and there's something now providing around 90 waters, and members will know some of these from their own constituencies. Can you tell me where all of that will fit in the new Act, because I couldn't see it in the draft?
So do you want to just update on that a bit?
Yes, none of those words in the 1966 Act are being amended by the new Act. Those will remain.
They'll remain there?
The duties of the department have.
And then, secondly, in the public engagement piece, I've never held back on my feelings around the importance of public engagement in certain business areas of DAERA, especially fisheries and forestry. I'm concerned, and I've expressed concern and remain concerned about the seemingly the disappearance of public engagement during the COVID period. Where would public engagement sit with the focus there will be on the environment around fisheries and protection of habitat and all of that? Will there be additional policy work done to secure public engagement and public education, and whatever buy-in we can get from the public in terms of protecting what we have?
So first of all, there's been extensive engagement for this bill development, and there will continue co-design. Continue to be that. Secondly, just concurrent work that we're doing in the department on public angling estate, which has co-design, and we've got significant stakeholder engagement there with a broad range of stakeholders, anglers, people from the environment, etc., about how we actually take forward a modern, accessible public angling estate. And then what has happened internally in the department is that we, and this is lessons learned, I think, from Loch Ness and other water quality issues, is that we've cohered policy within one division. So now water policy has moved to my division. Colin leads in that with a team, and that now sits. They're taking forward the Forth River Basin Management Plan, and that'll bring in stakeholders. But now other plans will sit with that River Basin Management Plan. So when looking at shellfish plans, looking at fisheries, etc. So before, I would say it was more siloised, and therefore there was a focus on one particular issue. And as I've mentioned, this is more about having a more integrated approach, ecosystem based, because if we don't have a healthy environment, we're not going to have healthy fish stocks. And so this is actually, we get this right, and we deliver this legislation in the future, and we see improvements, then that hopefully should be a benefit to the angler, because they'll see better fish stocks. Colin, have you anything to add on the River Basin Management Plan?
Just more that there's that ongoing engagement, and more engagement will be planned. We've had stakeholder workshops last week, and there will be further workshops planned as we go through the remainder of this year in developing the plan, and that includes representatives from angling.
Okay. And Chair, I'll just add one thing. The culture has changed. So right across marine and fisheries, and other parts of the department, it's very much centred on co-design. Policy is centred on co-design. So the main marine strategies, which you might have seen recently go through different consultations, etc., everything's predicated on co-design. So that, and this bill is no exception, so that we have that stakeholder engagement early on.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Michelle?
Thank you. And I was actually going to ask the same question as John in relation to where the promotion of angling sat in this new bill vis-a-vis the 1966 Act. So I'm a little bit confused now as to the status of the 1966 Act.
You want to
Take that? Yeah. So this bill creates some standalone provision, but it also makes amendments to the 66 Act. So large parts of the 66 Act will still remain. We have identified that there are areas that if we had time we would remove, that are areas that are primarily sort of no longer used or no longer reflect today's practices, but those haven't been included in this bill at the moment. This bill provides standalone provision and makes the stated amendments to the Act to facilitate those changes.
I think we probably do need a little bit more clarity in relation to that and how this new bill will sit alongside then the 66 Act, given the policy objective of the 1966 Act is very different to what you're proposing here today.
We've made an assessment of how the 66 Act will look once this comes into effect, and if it would be helpful we could provide that to show you the changes that would be proposed to the 66 Act with this provision.
I think that would be really helpful for us to have in advance of second stage. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Michelle? Gareth?
It's just, I suppose, looking at the Minister's letter to the Chair, you know, it talks about the Department aims to prevent deterioration in water quality, promote ecological improvement and provide the Department with clear, proportionate and flexible regulatory powers. It's just on the flexibility aspect of it, because flexible and regulatory don't really sit in the same sentence too well. And what weight do you give to that element of flexibility, and is that more around what has been discussed around co-design and stakeholder buy-in in terms of the approach, that there will be flexibility, or you know, a real-time approach to a situation as opposed to a heavy-handed regulatory approach? Well, I'm just keen to understand what that means.
Yeah, okay. When conducting investigations, regulators have to, and DAERA have to follow the DAERA enforcement policy, which is a proportionate and escalatory mechanism. However, when you look at the primary legislation, it's going straight to, magistrates court, etc. So what this does is provides extra levels of penalties through fixed penalty notices, which don't criminalise people. So that means lower level events can be dealt with without having to resort to go to court, potentially. So therefore there's a bit more, when say the flexibility and applying the enforcement policy, we'll now have the flexible or the escalatory tools to be able to address different levels of harm to the environment. So we're not really using a sledgehammer to crack a small nut all the time. We can actually address, and this lays out the enforcement toolkit which we're going to provide. But underneath that, there's still advisory and education and warning letter, the warning. So it's still escalatory against the policy, and it'll be determined by the individual components of the case.
There's a date. Thomas.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation this morning. Have you had any engagement, or do you plan to have any engagement with hydro operators, and where you see the future of hydro sitting within this bill? Because we do know that 1966 Act, the hydro sits within that. How does it fit within this going forward?
So the Federal Allison, who's done a lot of the engagement during the development of this bill, and then Colin, if you want to come in on the policy relating to that.
Yes, I have met with hydro operators on a couple of occasions during the course of the policy development. This bill doesn't make any changes to the parts of the Act that they currently would
be discussing. Normally 54, 58 and 59 of the Fisheries Act 66. This bill doesn't propose any changes to the requirements of those sections of the Act. We have had wider discussions with them about their input in river basin management planning and about sort of energy power, and I would hope that those discussions will continue. It certainly would be beneficial.
Yeah, I'll pick up. Yeah, so I had some direct conversations last week with representatives from the British Hydropower Association at a river basin planning workshop we held, and we discussed the nature of the sort of the challenge they could see, and I think, you know, probably to describe it best, this Fisheries Act 1966 taking a purely fisheries perspective on things versus hydropower being an alternative user of our water resource. So it's actually through our river basin management planning process that we can then look at balancing what activities and what uses we want to make of our water resources, and deciding you know, the approaches and the controls, etc., that need to be there. So I think that's where this is, again, in aligning the fisheries management with the river basin planning, allows us to look at stretches of river and start to take decisions about what is sustainable use of that water resource, and try to mitigate any adverse effects, but yet still provide for sustainable use of it through things like hydropower, which may provide opportunities for renewable energy at a small scale. So very, very good discussion with them. More work needing to be done, but certainly you know, we will do that.
Those discussions will be ongoing.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions online, guys? Content? Okay, thank you very much for your attendance. And we will hear from you in due course. We'll get to make acquaintance and make friends over this next few months then.
Thank you very much. I think that'll be the case, Chair. Thanks very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, members, I'm just going to ask for your indulgence that we take a short break, a short comfort break. Members content? Okay, thank you.
Committee Room 21. Sound. 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 Committee Room 21. Sound.
Okay, that's us back in session, members. So agenda item 8 is the Hunting with Dogs bill. So I refer you to the pack and a copy of the draft citizen space questions, which starts at page 102. Are members content with the questions as drafted, or do any members wish to make any additions? Okay, thank you, members. You're content. And are members content that the survey is issued as soon as possible? Members, regarding the length of time for the survey, the ANC bill survey is running for 8 weeks. However, I would propose that the survey runs for around 10 weeks to allow for the holiday period in July. Members content with that approach? Thank you. We're also referred to the pack a copy of the draft stakeholder list, which starts at page 108. Are members content with the list as drafted, or do members wish to make any additions to the draft stakeholder list? Content. Thank you, members. As members are aware, the committee stage commenced on the 27th of May. The last day of committee stage is currently the 2nd of September 2026, by which time the committee should lay its report unless the committee seeks an extension. We considered the matter briefly last week and discussed the possible dates and agreed to return to the matter again today to discuss further and agree an extension date motion. Members, before we do so, I refer you to the pack, starting at page 113, to a draft timetable for consideration of the 3 bills that will likely be going through the committee stage by September. The timetable proposes equal time as far as possible to each bill in terms of oral evidence sessions and deliberation sessions. Members will note that it includes extra meetings on Tuesdays, and those will start from the 15th of September onwards to cover the Fisheries Bill, leaving both members' bills to be dealt with at the Thursday meetings. That is presuming the Fisheries Bill reaches committee stage by then. Any additional stakeholder evidence aside from the 10 oral evidence sessions timetabled for each bill may need to be considered for informal stakeholder events. And I know in a previous discussion there may be other private members' bills that the committee might have to take on board, so that's also sitting there, but we haven't been notified officially. Members, are you content with the draft timetable at this point in time? The caveat to this timetable is that many committees will be seeking additional meetings, and we may need to return to this in September. I suspect we will if other matters do come to our attention. If we are required to revisit in the light of other Bill Office advice. Content?
Again, I suppose the point that I was making last week was just in relation to pressures on staff and whether that gave us sufficient time. And obviously, if other bills are likely to come, will that then further challenge that?
The other point, so time is a critical issue, as is the size of the ERA committee support team, which isn't adequate, I don't think, particularly at a moment like this. I'm not sure if this is protocol, Clerk, for the committee to request or to keep that on track, that in terms of the resource that we have available, to have it reviewed in terms of the adequacy of the challenges that we're going to face with these bills, because I'm mindful of the fact that staff at times are burdened, can't even get time off. So therefore, to ensure we have the due diligence and scrutiny of these bills, the resource behind that's going to be really important, as is the timeframes, as Michelle has pointed out. Can we reach back then into the Assembly of the Commission here in that regard?
Chair, it might be potentially appropriate for you to raise it at your next CLG meeting directly with the clerk assistant responsible for this.
Well, I'm happy to do it. Would members be content if I actually write to the CLG in that regard, in regards to the resource and the time constraints of this? We'll agree this today, I imagine, but also would like to put on record with CLG the volume of work that we're going to have, and just to be alive to it, particularly in regards to the resources for the support. Yep. Okay. Members, based on the draft timetable, I now also refer you to the pack at page 112 to the motion to extend the committee stage of the Hunting with Dogs Bill to the 5th of February 2027. The Clerk has spoken with the Bill Office regarding the proposed date, and to move beyond that date is leaving things very, very tight for the remaining stages. We will be aiming to complete in advance of that date in regard to all of the bills. So are you content that we agree this proposed extension date? Yep. Okay. Thank you, members. Agenda item 9 is the Departmental Written Briefing Strategic Investment Board's independent review of the Tackling Rural Poverty and Social Isolation Framework, otherwise known as TRIPSI. I refer you to page 123 of the pack of the written briefing. A copy of the independent report starts at page 127. Its recommendations, together with DAERA's response, starts at page 239. As members are aware, the TRIPSI framework was launched in 2016 to support a range of measures to help address financial poverty, tackle poverty and social isolation in rural areas. In June 2024, an independent review of the framework by the Strategic Investment Board was commenced, and the final report was submitted to DAERA in 2026. The review has informed the development of the Department's new draft rural policy, Rural NI, our new approach, 26 to 41, which was available for public consultation from the 9th of March to the 1st of June. The new draft rural policy has 3 core objectives: to improve the scope, relevance, accessibility and timeliness of rural research, statistics and other evidence and their use across government, to inform, influence and support strategic government policy from a rural perspective, and to promote and support innovative, collaborative government action on rural challenges and opportunities. It also includes a proposal for a new rural collaboration fund to facilitate collaboration between DAERA and other NI government departments to tackle rural challenges. Subject to approval of the draft rural policy, the current TRIPSI approach will be embedded into the new rural collaboration fund. The Department is currently analysing the responses to the public consultation, and officials are scheduled to provide an oral briefing to the committee on the policy on the 2nd of July, and will publish a summary response report later this summer. Have you any comments you can tend to note? I know it's something that a number of members are particularly engaged in, so I know we'll have a very intense watch and brief on this one. Agenda item 10, members, is a departmental written brief in the Material Facilities Charging Scheme, Northern Ireland 2027. Refer you to page 244 of your pack, a written briefing advising of the Department's intention to introduce a charging scheme providing for an annual subsistence fee. for materials facilities from the 1st of April 2027. No new legislation is required as there are existing powers under the Waste Management Facilities Regulations, Northern Ireland 2025, which we approved on the 27th of February, which introduced mandatory sampling and reporting at MF sites and allowed introduction via a charging scheme. The Department proposed the introduction of an annual subsistence fee of £3,000 for MF sites that operate under a waste licence or permit, handle over 1,000 tonnes of waste annually and fall within the MF definition and relevant code of practice. It is anticipated that approximately 9 MF sites will be affected. The fee, which will be reviewed annually and adjusted for inflation or increased costs, ensures full cost recovery for regulatory activity conducted by an IEA. The proposed introduction of a subsistence fee in Northern Ireland will align us with the rest of the UK, and the briefing outlines the current levels of fees in other jurisdictions. So members, have you any comments you can tend to note? Okay, members, thank you. Agenda item 11 is SR 2026-105, the Farming with Nature Scheme Amendment Regulations, Northern Ireland 2026. So I refer you to the pack, the SL5 at page 258, the SR starting at page 259, and the explanatory memorandum starting at page 271. The Department submitted the SL1 and the draft SR to the Committee on the 24th of April to advise of its intention to make a new regulation under the negative resolution procedure to provide the Department with the legal powers to update payment rates, expand eligibility and introduce additional actions to Year 2 of the Farming with Nature Transition Scheme. At our meeting on the 7th of May, the Committee agreed to receive an oral briefing from officials and to issue a call for reviews using the Citizen Space platform, which received no responses. At last week's meeting, we held that oral evidence session with officials and agreed we were content to support the SR as drafted. The Department has advised that there have been no changes to policy content since the SL1 was submitted to the Committee. So I now am going to put the question on the SR, that the Committee for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs has considered SR 2026-105, the Farming with Nature Scheme Amendment Regulations, Northern Ireland 2026, and has no objection to the rules subject to the report of the Examiner of Statutory Rules. So members, are you agreed? Agreed, thank you. Members, I now request that we move to agenda item 16. This was a late addition to the agenda as the committee team only received the SR report after the main pack was issued on Monday. So agenda item 16 is SR 2026, the mandatory use of closed circuit television in slaughterhouse regulations, Northern Ireland 2026. I refer you to the table papers for the following papers. The SL5, page 15, the draft SR and explanatory memorandum starting at page 17, the Department notification of the Assembly debate at page 27, and the 68th ESR report dated the 9th of June, page 29. As you recall, the Department submitted the SL1 and draft SR to the Committee on the 9th of February to make a new regulation under the draft affirmative procedure to mandate the use of closed-circuit television in slaughterhouses which handle live animals. At our meeting on the 19th of February, we agreed to issue a call for views, which closed on the 4th of March. No responses were submitted. Then at our meeting on the 19th of March, following an oral briefing from officials, we agreed to support the SR as drafted in the debate in the Assembly, which was scheduled for the 1st of June. That debate did not go ahead due to typographical drafting error, as highlighted by the SR in her report, and a corrected draft SR was laid on the 3rd of June. So members, following on from what we have heard from officials, and bear in mind the SL1 stage is the last opportunity for the committee to influence the policy approach. Are members content that we have sufficient information to make a formal decision on the draft SR? Yep. Okay. Okay, members. As the procedure is draft affirmative, there will be the debate in plenary. So are you content that the committee supports the SR as drafted in the debate? Yep. Thank you, members. Okay. So agenda item 12 is correspondence. So members, the correspondence memo starts at page 275 of the pack. I'm going to just highlight a few items and seek agreement that the others are actioned as on the memo that you have in your packs. So members agreed with that approach? Thank you. Okay, the first one I want to refer you to is at page 278 of the pack, the correspondence from the Department dated the 5th of June regarding the launch on the 28th of May of the public appointments process for the Just Transition Committee, which will run until the 25th of June, which is literally in a fortnight's time.
Chair, sorry, you just said committee.
Commission. Just Transition Commission. So members, any comments you can tend to note? Okay, thank you. Next item I want to refer you to is on page 336 of the pack, to a memo dated the 4th of June from the Clerk to the Committee for Finance regarding the HM Treasury Open Book Review of Northern Ireland's executive budget. A copy of the report can be found starting at page 337. Any comments you can tend to note? Thank you, members. 12.9 then, I refer you to pack page 385, correspondence dated the 2nd of June from the Young Farmers Club's ERA Committee requesting to meet with the committee. So members, have you any comments, or are you content to add them to our list for the autumn? The team have a very long list at this stage and will bring a document forward before summer recess so that we can further prioritise. Yeah. Thank you, members. And the next item is at page 386 for correspondence from the Dogs Trust regarding its concerns at the delay in legislating regarding the sale and supply of puppies and kittens, seeking an update from the Minister and a clear timeline for next steps. So members will recall that we considered a written briefing on the outcome of the public consultation and the proposed way forward, and agreed to write to the Department to get a timeline for the introduction of the legislation. We considered the Department's response on the 5th of March, noting that once the consultation response and way forward is published, the Department will set up an implementation group with councils to plan the best way to deliver the new requirements. If there are any comments, are you content to forward the Minister's response to Dogs Trust? Yep. The next item then is at page 388 to the correspondence from NI Water, offering to brief the committee after recess on its PC 28 submission. Members will recall we had an evidence session with NI Water at our joint concurrent meeting with the Committee for Infrastructure on the 21st of April, when we were briefed on NI Water's role and contribution to the Loughney Action Plan, including delivery in the Loughney wastewater scheme to reduce nutrient loading. So members, have any comments? Are you content to request a written briefing in the first instance? Yep, thank you members. Okay members, I referred to page 29 for table papers to the 68th ESR report dated the 9th of June. As we noted earlier, the report draws the special attention of the Assembly to the draft ESR, the mandatory use of closed circuit television slaughterhouse regulations in Northern Ireland 2026, and that's in relation to a typographical error. As members will recall, we agreed that we were content for the Department to proceed with the ESR as proposed under the draft affirmative procedure. The Department has confirmed that it will correct this error at its earliest opportunity, and the ESR is content with that approach. So members, any comments? Content to know? Thank you, members. Okay, members, the forward work programme is starts at page 10 of your table paper, so you content that it's published? Thank you, members. Members, at last week's meeting, members requested the team look into an additional meeting to take evidence on the issue around the export of poultry litter. The team have now provisionally booked the Senate for Tuesday the 23rd of June, starting at 10 a.m. If it's agreed today, the team will go ahead and invite SES, the NI Poultry Federation, to represent the egg producers, and the UFU. Pilgrims were also mentioned, however. I took the opportunity to speak to them at the AD event last week in regard to their litter, and it's basically theirs is covered through Tully. So it doesn't impact on them in the same way. They felt they wouldn't have much to add. Are members content that they're not included at this stage? Yep, okay. Our members agreed to hold the meeting then, and the team will get a diary invite out to members and invite the stakeholders to give evidence. So you'll get that, and please do respond so that we know we've got enough members in there to host that meeting. Okay. Okay, members, for your diary planning, I would also like to highlight our forthcoming committee meeting on the 25th of June, postponed from the 30th of April due to the dilapidation bill. That was to be held at the Portaferry Hotel with briefings from NIFPO and ANIFPO, a visit to the Seal Rescue and Rehabilitation Centre, which is supported by DAERA, and then a visit to Portavogie Harbour to meet the harbour master and local fishermen. Members, this meeting and visit now takes on an enhanced significance for us due to the imminent introduction of the Fisheries, Aquaculture and Water Quality Bill. Further details will follow in next week's pack. The committee team could, if you wish, organise a bus leaving here at 9 a.m. and return to Stormont by 4 p.m. Otherwise, we agree to make our own way. So members, do you want to make your own way to it, or would you prefer to be transported together?
Where is it, Chair?
Portavogie. So it's quite a distance. Well,
Portaferry.
it's Portaferry. It's not. It's just it's down the peninsula. So
Not too far from here, no?
it's a fair wee bit. Michelle, how long would it be of a drive from here?
40 minutes.
40 minutes.
40 minutes from here.
35.
I don't mind making my own way. I don't mind travelling together too. I expect that. I'd like everybody to go, but obviously everybody has different commitments. Maybe in that latter part of the day.
But I mean, I wouldn't be sent to 3 p.m. I know already there's something else in that afternoon, so get away with it.
Okay.
Be okay.
Well, I think we'll make our own way. Is that okay?
Day of the week's that, Chair?
It's committee day. It's Thursday. It'll be Thursday, the 25th of June. So, could we get a specific diary? I know it's a committee day, but the details of that, the locations, the postcodes and stuff for the hotel where we'll be holding our committee meeting and getting the briefings and stuff. Is that okay? Okay, guys. Thank you very much.
Get the ferry across?
Yes, go around a long way. You could
well, I would be able to go across that way, see?
All right, yeah.
You've never been across them?
You mean like ferry across the loch and then a ferry across the other loch?
Time for the ferry goes from?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can drive down that side.
Yeah, okay. Members, is there any other business? I'm going to go Michelle first. I know you're the vice chairman. I'm going to go for Michelle first just for a change. Woo!
It's just in relation to Safina Foods.
Same issue.
Well, I was going to bring it up actually after you, but yes, go
I
ahead.
suppose the impact that's going to have on Northern Ireland pig producers, and I was wondering if it would be. I know that Ulster Farmers Union are arranging a meeting with the minister, but it might be timely for us to have a conversation, perhaps even with their pig committee, just to see what the impact is going to have on the sector.
I agree. So even at last Thursday's AD event, there were some pig producers there and had raised the issue. Do you want to add anything to that?
Just want to add to that. I think that if you look at the local press and even correspondence that came in, there's an urgency around this. I think it may come in too late, Chair, to be included in this week's pack. But there is an urgency around this, and serious applications obviously from an economic point of view, but also the prospect of pigs backing up on people's farms, the impact on the sector. So I think there seems to be quite an urgency in this, Chair.
Yep.
Yes, there was a letter that came in very late yesterday to me, and I did alert the UFU that it really wouldn't be, it was too late for this meeting, but I knew you would all know about it anyway. But we'll have their formal letter next week.
Would it be possible to arrange something early next week, even with them, even on an informal basis?
We have
just to try to move it on.
What do we have next? So
Chair, we can email the letter that came in, and then it'll be formally in the pack.
Okay. Are you thinking
Monday, Tuesday maybe?
Tuesday, if we could do something. The difficulty is, I suppose, just ensuring that the stakeholders can present and stuff. I mean, I don't mind put a wee pin in the date and time, see if we can get an hour. And invite them in. I think we'll do it informal, and then that means that if we don't have quorum, we can go ahead. We take the briefing. Is that okay, members? Because I think in terms of it doesn't matter if it's an informal session. The material is important enough. We'll still react in the same way.
It's just the timing of it. I think we need to be need to be acting on it.
Okay. So if members are content, we'll seek to do that. We'll respond. We'll offer up the opportunity for an informal session on Tuesday then, and we'll send out the specifics of that once we get confirmation that they're able to attend. Is that okay? Yeah. Thank you, members. Okay. Then any other business? Okay. Date and time and place of next meeting is 10 a.m. Thursday the 18th of June, room 21, Parliament Building. So the meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.